Welcome to MathLink Academy. I am Mr. C, and I'll be covering this particular unit where we're talking about multiplying and dividing whole numbers. So let's get started. Multiplication of whole numbers. The number to be multiplied is called the multiplicand. The number by which the multiplicand is multiplied is called the multiplier. Factors are the numbers used in multiplying. The result of multiplying is called the product. Again, you see these different terms, but the main thing I want you to understand is when we talk about multiplying numbers, we're talking about finding the product of a number. So for example, let's look at an example. We want to multiply 386 times 7. What's the product of it? That's the question they would ask. What's the product of this particular number for this example? So let's go to our whiteboard and see how to do this on our whiteboard. In this case, I decided to write it vertically so I could see a lot easier to multiply the numbers. So when I write it down, I have 386 times 7. So first thing I want to multiply is the 6 times the 7. And 6 times 7 is 42. We don't write both 4 and 2. We write down like we do previously in some of our lessons that we talked about. We're going to write down the 2 underneath the 7, and the 4 is going to go on top. So you see in the blue, the 42. We're carrying it on top to the next place value, which is the 10th. Now, what we're going to do next is multiply 8 times 7. We're not going to worry about the 4 right now. Multiply 8 times 7 in our case. 8 times 7 is 56. So keep that in mind. 8 times 7, and we write this on the side. 8 times 7 is equal to 56. But now, after we multiply, we look at that 4. This 4, and we're going to add 4 to 56. Which gives us 60. So first you multiply which is in black, the 8 and the 7, and then you add, if there's something to add, what was carried, in our case is 4, which is 60. And so I write down the 0 like we did before, and then I carry the 6 over. So notice 60 is written, but it's spread out. The 0 is written down, the 6 is put above the 3. Now we multiply 3 times 7. So 3 times 7 is 21. But we also got to consider of adding the 6 to 21. So first we multiply 3 times 7, which is 21. And then you add the 6, which is 27. And so our case, since we have nothing else to carry, we round down 27. And so our answer would be 2,702. And if this is our product, our answer was just the product. Since we're multiplying, we circle that for our answer. So the next problems we're going to do, if you notice I put down 2 problems, we're going to start with the first one. 342 times 2. We're going to multiply that using the same rule that we did before as far as multiplying. Start with the ones, move to the 10th and the 100th with that number 2, and then we'll do the second one a little later. So as we look at this particular problem, we're going to multiply 2 times 2, which is 4. There's nothing to carry, so it'll just be 4. Next, we do 2 times the 4, and 2 times that 4 is 8. Nothing to carry, nothing to put over. Then we say 2 times 3. 2 times 3 in our case is 6. And that would be our answer, 684. And then we'll circle it. And so for that particular problem, there's nothing to carry. Let's look at the next one. So for the next one, we have 4,615 times 5. So let's use that 5, guys. And so for 5 times 5 is 25. So we have 2 digits. So the 5 goes here and the 2 goes on top. So the first thing we should do is multiply 1 times 5. 1 times 5 is 5. Then we add 2, which is 7. Let's do the same thing to the next. We multiply 5 times 6. 5 times 6 is 30. Put down the 0. The 3 will go up. Now we multiply 5 times 4. 5 times 4 is 20. Then we add what's above, which is 3. So it'll be 23. And so our case is 23,075. And that's the product. Notice we carry twice on that particular problem. Or first problem, we had nothing to carry or to put above certain numbers. Let's look at one more multiplication. 4,312 times 6. Again, we're going to start with our ones. And 6 times 2 is 12. 2 goes down here, and the 1 goes in the 10th position. Next thing we do is multiply 6 times 1. 6 times 1 is 6, but don't forget there's a 1 on top, so we add 1, that'll be 7. Then we do 6 times 3. 6 times 3, as we look here, is 18. Put down the 8, but then we carry the 1 above the 4. Next thing we do is multiply 6 times 4. 6 times 4 is 24, but we add 1, which gives us 25 since there's a 1 above. And in our case, this would be our value, 25,872. And if that's our answer, we circle it. Now, the last thing we're going to talk about is division of whole numbers. So let's talk about that. In division, the number is divided is called the dividend. The number by which the dividend is divided is called the divisor. The result is the quotient. The difference we're talking about left over is called the remainder. There are times you may have a remainder, not all the time, in some of your division problems. We'll look at some of those problems and how to write the remainder. But again, the key where I really want you to focus on is the quotient. So when we talk about quotient, we're talking about division, dividing. And so one way we could look at it as a fraction is 3 or 36 divided by 6, or we also use this symbol, this dividing or symbol that we use in the past. So I'm going to actually show you how we can write this. So in our case, we could say 36 divided by 3. That's a fraction, 36 divided by 3. Or you can write this, 3, how many times the 3 goes into 36? This is our divisor, and this is our dividend. The answer on the top will be our quotient. So if we had a problem like this, let's actually do this. How do you do this? Normally we like to use, we call this long division, and we write it in the case that I put in green. This is long division. More likely I will put it in long division so we understand how to do it. So first thing you do, you go and see how many times does 3 go into this first value right here without going over. So how many times do 3 go into 3? In our case, 1 time. So we put a 1 above the 3. That's in a dividend. Now we multiply 1, notice this, 1 times 3, which is 3, and then we subtract, and this is a 0. We don't usually put that there, but we can right now, and have a 6 here. So in this case, we're just looking at now, we just bring down the 6. Where did that 6 come from? We brought it down. We brought the 6 down. Excuse me for erasing it a little bit, but we brought it down. You just bring down the next number. Now you see how many times does this 3, I'm going to underline in green, go into 6? Without going over. So how many times does 3 go into 6? 2 times. And in our case, we write down 2, and then above the 6, and then we multiply 3 times 2, or 2 times 3, which is 6. And then you subtract, and 0. And in this case, we have no remainder. There's nothing else to bring down from the problem that's in our dividend, and our remainder is 0. And so our answer would be 12. So a couple ways you can look at this. You can say 36 over 3 is equal to 12. And then you can circle this. That's one way. Or you could do it this way. You can actually use the long division, and this answer would be 12. We're going to look at some more problems to get a better understanding how to do long division. So the more problems you do, the better you get a bigger hand on, or a bigger grip on how to do division. Now let me give some rules for dividing by 0, or a number divided, or 0 divided by a number. So 0 divided by a number equals 0. For example, 0 divided by 5 is 0. This symbol here again is a division sign. This is saying 0 over 5. One way to say it. And this is equal to 0. Now, dividing by 0 is impossible, and we say it's undefined. So if you see an example of 5 divided by, notice I'm circling that division sign, by 0, it's not possible. So 5 divided by 0 does not exist. It's undefined. You can say DNE means does not exist, or you can write down the word undefined next to it. Either way, you're good. Remember, you cannot, it's impossible, dividing by 0. 0 cannot be on the bottom. 0 cannot be, in other words, your dividend, or your divisor, excuse me, your divisor. Let's look at some procedures for division. We did one earlier. Let's do another one in this particular problem, and we'll take this problem to our whiteboard. So here's our problem. 4,505 divided by 6. A couple ways we could look at it. We could write it like this, divided by 6, or we're going to do the long division, where we have a divisor, 6. How many times we're going to make it go into? 4505. Okay, so we're going to write it that way. I'm going to erase the first 2 and do a long division. So let's go along with this particular problem and see how we can do this. So what we want to look at is 6. Can 6 go in the first number here? Can 6 go into 4? In our case, it cannot, because 4 is less. So we're going to now look at, can 6 go into 45? Not just 4, but now 45, the next 2 numbers, without going over. Again, that's key, without going over. I keep saying that. So we know 6 times 5 is 30. Is that correct? So I'm starting there. And then 6 times 6 is 36. Okay, 6 times 7 is 42. We're pretty good right there. 6 times 8 is 48. So 48 is bigger than 45. So I got to go back one more, which was 6 times 7. In our case, I'm going to put a 7 over the 5. And then 6 times 7, or 7 times 6, is 42. Again, I'm not going over 45. I'm going under, just under. And that's the number that's just under. If I had an 8 up here, it would have been 48, which I couldn't use. Now, after we do this multiplication of 7 times 6 and writing down 42, what we're going to do is subtract. The pattern stays the same. So we're going to subtract 45 from 42. That cancel, that's good. 5, and this will be 3. Now, we know 6 cannot go into 3, so what we can do is bring down this 0. Now we're looking at this number 6, how many times it goes into 30 without going over. So I know 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5 is 30. 6 times 6 is 36. Go back. 6 times 5. So I'm going to put a 5 here. And 6 times 5, or 5 times 6, in our case, will be 30. And subtract. It didn't go over. I'm not going over, but it's equal to. And in this case, this is 0. Okay? Now, we're not done because we still got another number here, which is 5. So we bring down the 5 here. And so I don't normally write down 0, 5, but for right now, I'm going to erase that 0 and say, how many times does 6 goes into 5? Now, that's our last number. That's our last digit. So 6 cannot go into 5. And so I'm going to put a 0 right here because 6 cannot go into 5. And we have no other numbers after 5. And so that would be our remainder. Our remainder would be 5. Your remainder is always less than your divisor. So 5 is less than 6. So how do I write this? You're going to say the answer is really going to be 750 with a remainder of 5. And just say R is equal to 5. So this particular answer has a remainder. Again, not all answers have a remainder, but this one does. And notice your remainder is less than this number, 5, is less than 6. Now, if that was greater, then 6 can go into another number that is bigger than itself. So let's look at another example on our whiteboard. 241 divided by 6. So another way of looking at this is 241 divided by 6. Excuse the handwriting. It'll get a little better down the line. Or another way of looking at it in long division, and I like writing in long division, is how many times the 6 goes into 241. So let's do that one. So I'm going to erase the first 2 ways and write it and show the work. So for example, we're going to start off. We're going to look at the 6 and the 2. So we first look at the 2. Can 6 go into 2? It cannot, because 2 is less than 6. So now we're going to look at the first 2 numbers. Can 6 goes into 24? Yes, it can. Now we got to think without going over. So 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24. So actually that's equal. So I'm just going to stop right there. So I know I'm going to say a 4 here, 4 times, and let me erase this red mark so you won't be confused there. So the 4 times 6 is 24. You multiply and subtract. That's how you do multiply and subtract, multiply and subtract. And so in this case, we subtract. This becomes 0. 6 cannot go into 0, but we got a 1 to bring down. So let's bring down this 1. And can 6 go into 1? It cannot, so we put a 0 up here. And then our remainder will be 1. And so how we write this is 40 with a remainder of 1. Okay? Let's do another one. Let's use 2,583. And let's also do this. Divide that by 6 and see what we get there. So let's continue. And we're going to use long division. So I'm going to say 6. How many times does 6 go into 2583? Some people call that 2583. That 2,583. So let's go a long division and see what we get here. So can 6 go into 2? No. So let's go in here. Let's go to the next 2. Can 6 go into 25? It can. Now we don't want to go over. So we know 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5 is 30. 30 is too big. It's bigger. So we got to go 1 less. So 6 times 4. So in this case, I'm going to write in blue. We do 4 times 6, which is 24. And then subtract, multiply, subtract. So when we subtract, this will become a 1. And then we could bring down the next value, which is 8. Now we're looking at 18. Can 6 go into 18? It can, actually can go in evenly. We know it can go in there 3 times. So it'll be 3 times 6, which is 18. And then next time we're going to subtract that. This is 0. And then we bring down the 3. Can 6 go into 3? No, it cannot. So in this case, we'll put a 0 here. And then we have nothing else to carry down. So in this case, this is our remainder. So we say with a remainder of 3. And that would be our answer. That would be our answer. Let's go a little bit different on this particular problem. I want to show you another one. So let's write this down. I'm going to write it already in long division. Since we're working with 6, 6 is a good number to work with. How many times does 6 go, let's say, into 27, 8? 8. Let's do that. Okay. So we're already going to write in long division. So we know 6 cannot go into 2, but we can see that 6 can go into without going over. What number can we use? We know 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5 is 30. Ooh, that's too big. So we're going to go back to 6 times 4. In this case, we have a 4 above the 7. It's above the 7 because we're not looking at the 2, but we're looking at 27. That's 7. So look, 4 times 6 is 24. We subtract. Again, multiply, subtract. That's the key right there. And then this gives us a 3. We could bring this down. This is 8. So now we're looking at how many times does 6 go into 38 without going over. In our case, it's going to be 6 times because 6 times 6 is 36. And then 6 times 7 is 42. So we want to do 6 times 6. We do subtract. This is remainder of 2. And you bring this 8 down. And I usually write it in red. I'm going to write this 8 in red. So now we got 28. Now we want to see how many times the 6 goes into 28 without going over. We know 6 times 4 is 24. We've been working with that. 6 times 5 is 30. So it must be 4 again. So here we go with a 4. So notice I put the 4 above the 8. 6 times 4 is 24. Subtract. Now our bottom number here, I'm going to put over here, it's going to be 4. Can 6 go into 4? Well, no, but we're still supposed to bring down a number. There's no other number to bring down. So guess what this 4 would be? This 4 would be our remainder. So how we write this is we say R is equal to 4. And notice 4 is less than 6. Your remainder is always less than your divisor. And so that's what we have. That's our answer as far as long division. Let's do one more division problem. And we're going to say 5. How many times does 5 go into this number? This particular number is 60,135. How many times does it go into there? So first thing I'm going to do is see, does 5 go into 6, the first digit, without going over? And it does. 5 can go into 6. How many times without going over? In this case, is 1 time. Because 1 times 5, we multiply, is 5, and then we subtract. Multiply, subtract. This is a 1. Now you could bring down this 0. Now you're going to say, how many times does 5 goes into 10 without going over? Well, we know that 2 times 5 is 10. And so this, we put the 2 above the 0. So 2 times 5 is 10. Multiply, then we subtract. This is a remainder of 0 here. Now we have a value of 1. Can 5 go into 1? It cannot go into 1. So we brought down this 1 from down here, and since 5 cannot go into 1, I'm going to make it a 0. And now I got to bring down the next value, which is 3. Can 5 go into 13? Yes, 5 can go into 13 without going over. We know 5 times 2 is 10. 5 times 3 is 15. So in this case, we're going to say 2. 2 times 5 is 10. Subtract. This is 3. Now we bring down this 5. 5, how many times can 5 go into 35? Without going over, it would be 7. 7 times that is 35 with the remainder of 0. There's no other numbers that we have to work with. And so our remainder is 0. So this goes into evenly. This is an example of a number that goes into another number evenly. And so our answer would just be this, 12,027. And then we'll circle it. There's no remainder. You don't say the remainder is equal to 0. You do not write R is equal to 0. If it's R is equal to 0, then you just don't write it. So you don't have to write that. This number goes into evenly. So I hope this helped you with the concept of multiplying and also dividing whole numbers. If you have any questions, feel free to review this particular video or go to any of the resources that we have on our MathLink Academy website. Hope this helped. Thank you.